Hello, everyone. Happy Monday, and welcome to this episode of FPP Live, a time I connect with you every Monday, 7 p.m. EST, to connect all things faith with purpose and profit. Always excited to be here to pour into you. So as you come in, y'all know how I do, especially those of you that watch every week. Tell me name, tell me where you're joining from. If as I'm sharing anything resonates with you, I want to hear it because I'm ultimately doing all of this for you. Now, let me tell you why I do these conversations every week. The reason why I connect faith with purpose and profit is the one missing ingredient I see so many faith based entrepreneurs leave out is faith. They leave God out of them running their business. And so I want you to know that I'm committed every Monday as I come here. And then Tuesday, as we have our part two conversation. Hey, Letitia. Am I saying it right? Letitia in San Antonio. As I come in and have these conversations with you every week, I want you to see how faith is the missing ingredient that will make the difference in you having a successful business. That is why I do the faith, purpose, profit. So Monday is kind of like a Bible study, but here's the other thing I've realized in me doing the work that I've been doing. I've been researching my next book. Many of you guys know that is as I'm studying this whole thing God has called me to do, which is help people get in alignment with their assignment, which is to start businesses. That in every book I've read, whether it's Purpose Driven Life, I won't go through all the books I've been studying. It doesn't talk about building a business. And then the business books don't talk about building your faith. So on Mondays, I'm committed, or when I come do these conversations with you every week, because there's a part one and a part two, I'm committed that I give you everything you need to connect your faith with purpose and profit. You need all three. All right. So we're continuing with a 6-part series. Today is part 3 as we talk about stop fighting your GPS. Yeah, you have a GPS that's automatically programmed in you. But let me do a quick review of the first 2 sections that I started with. I love that you guys are talking to each other. Those of you that are here live, yes, I'm glad. So what's WOG? Greetings to you, woman of God. Oh, hello. Got to learn all these little phrases. So with that said, listen. I started a 6-part series a couple of weeks ago with you. And the 6-part series is why your business, it was why business matters to God, but really it's why your business matters to God. I want to encourage you, if you've missed any of those parts, the way I teach one leads to the next. I want to encourage you to go back and listen. You can listen to previous weeks by going to my podcast. FPPpodcast.com is where you can go listen to the previous 2 weeks if you've missed any. As I'm going to review quickly, but I'm not going to give it all to you. So we started week 1 with, again, why business is important to God. And we looked at the creation in the Bible. We started with Genesis 1 and 2. The thing that's interesting is people. And by the way, I've gotten a lot of comments on this, and people are saying God didn't work. Hello. What does creating mean? The word creating means, I'm looking down in the definition that I pulled from Webster. Okay, so I didn't write this. It says to bring something into existence, to produce or bring about by a course of action. So I dug into that and how not only did God do the first work, but Jesus' work too. Y'all realize Jesus was a carpenter? Hello, that's work. And so as we each were born in this world, God gave us our own special work to do. So I dug into that in part 1. Then part 2, last week, I talked about the fact that what a relay teaches you about having a successful business, because it's a relay. Listen, there are 2 things that are magic in a relay race, and it's the passing of the baton and the catching of it. And so last week, I talked about the fact that God passed us his image. hmm And so how did you catch it? Maybe you didn't all the way catch it yet. Maybe you're a little bit of the way catching it. But not only do you have to catch it, but then you have to toss it back off yourself. And so even when you think about relay, I'm really talking about relationship. And you can't even spell relationship without saying relay first. Because a relationship is a relay, it's how you toss and catch. We're going to continue that part of the conversation as we begin to look at this week, Stop Fighting Your GPS. Now, I like to think that GPS is God's placement system. The thing that's interesting is when we each were born to this world, God put a placement system inside of us. It's called your purpose. And even I talked about that in regards to image last week. So if y'all missed it, fpppodcast.com, go listen to that episode. But I need you to understand this. When I was thinking about what to call this week, what popped in my mind, and I hope he doesn't hear me. He might come here and say something too. The thing that's interesting is when I'm driving in a car with my husband, he is always fighting the GPS as if he knows where he's going. And how many of you do that? How many of you fight the GPS as if it doesn't know the direction to give you? Now, I will admit that sometimes the GPS will be off, but God, as our GPS, is never off. God does not make a mistake. He's not confused. He doesn't change his mind. He doesn't recalibrate, although we sometimes need to because we're not following direction. So, listen. Following direction is the same thing that helps us matriculate through school, helps us get the grades we want to get. It helps us also to matriculate to the next grade. Following direction is what helps us do well at work because our boss gives us directives or the company we work for gives us directives, which becomes a benchmarks by way we actually are showing that we're doing good work. Even as an entrepreneur, you've got to have benchmarks. We're going to talk about that next week. But you've got to have some insight, but you've got to have the directive to get to that insight. Listen, even in relationships, even in health, even with your bank account, we all have certain things that we know we shouldn't do. Oh, I could talk all day long. Many of you that are with me every week, health is my current struggle, being in perimenopause. There's things I know I shouldn't eat. But see, that's a directive, that's instruction. If I follow the GPS, I'll get to my goal. Even my bank account. If I follow my GPS, I'll get to my goal. But if I don't, then I won't. And so your business is no different. So we're continuing this conversation of why your business is important to God is really looking at this directives that God has given to us. So I want to continue. We started looking at John 15 last week. So I want to continue that. I take that sip of water. So let's read John. We're going to read 15, 9, and 10. And you're going to see I'm going to repeat some verses over from last week, and you're going to see how these things I'm teaching you really kind of go and expand each other so deep. Okay. So John 15, 9, and 10 says this. As the Father loved me, so this is Jesus reminding you, talking to the disciples, those of you that have been with me every week. As the Father loved me, I also loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in him. So, for our conversation this week, as we talk about stop fighting your GPS, the first piece I want to pull out of this Bible verse is the word abide. Now, with two Bible verses, I should say. Now, what's interesting is Jesus said abide 3 times. It's like, Jesus, why are you repeating yourself? Now, anytime there is a series of Bible verses and they say the same words over and over again, it's obviously important. Let me read it one more time so you hear it. Okay. As a Father loved me, I also have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. So the word abide means to remain in place. It's to accept or act in accordance with. Again, I'm going to say this over and over, to remain in place. The one thing I see so many entrepreneurs do is they don't remain in place. God might drop a vision in your spirit. Though the vision tarry, wait for it. We forget that Habakkuk 2:2 says that. What's interesting is so many people think it's taking too long, or maybe I'm doing something wrong, or whatever that is, and then they flee from it, which means you're not abiding. And ultimately, if God has put this purpose inside of you, then he's to give you your directive, and he tells you when to leave and when to move, not you, not your flesh. See, when we're operating in our zone of genius and God is expanding our territory, he's going to call us to be uncomfortable because you're growing. And if you're trusting and abiding, you remain steadfast and unmovable. So I really want to peel this back in this conversation this week. This part one, and we'll do part two even more. And the reason I'm going to do this is because I see so many people that do not abide, don't understand it, don't even sign up to it, let alone to follow the directive. So we'll talk about abide. We'll talk about directive part two. Okay. So listen, John 15:5 says, I am the vine. This is God talking now, or Jesus talking on behalf of God. I'm the vine. You are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit. For without me, you can do nothing. Now, y'all know I always study my Tony Evans study Bible. It's always my favorite. So I looked up this Bible verse, John John 15:5. Hold on, I gotta get to it. And here's what it says under the notes. Okay. So deep, y'all. A branch that's disconnected from the vine is useless. I'm going to say that one more time. A vine that's disconnected, a branch that's disconnected from the vine is useless. So also, we can't produce fruit unless we remain in Jesus. The idea of remaining or abiding in Christ has to do with intimacy and relationship. Remember, I just talked about relay from last week. You can't avoid Jesus all week and then show up on Sunday morning expecting to grow. We only produce much fruit when we remain in Him. So, this whole thought of remaining is a huge piece. So, let's talk about the three things you've got to do to abide. And I really want you to think about where you are in deficit in these three, because as I'm doing this 6-part series, as I share with you, I'm doing a study because I'm writing my next book, but God is showing me the areas that don't get talked about in business, especially a faith based business. Okay. So, first thing you got to do to abide, again, to remain in place, to wait patiently for. For what? For directive. We'll talk about directive tomorrow. But you got to remain in place. This is what my husband doesn't do with the GPS. He doesn't remain in place. He starts to do his own thing and starts to listen to his own self. Like, I know better than the GPS. How? When never lived here, you don't even know what street you're on right now. And many of you, that's what's happening as you start your business. You are not remaining in place. When you've never started a business before, or those of you that are at a place it's time to grow your business, you've never grown a business, not at the level where you feel is next for you, but you're listening to your own direction when you've never been here before. Come on, somebody. So, dare I say, without loving me, you don't know what the heck you doing. Just like my husband don't know where he's going. And neither do you half the time. But you're going to give yourself direction. Girl, bye. And boy, bye. And I can say that because that was me for years in my business that I thought, oh, I have a master's degree. I have a graduate degree. I should know. Yeah, I didn't know. I don't care how brilliant I was. I didn't know. So the first thing I had to learn to do was to spend time with God. Yes, you've got to spend time with God. Now, those of you that are in my tribe, you hear me talk about this. This is one of the concepts I am always talking to my clients about, and I give them tools to do it. They call us human beings, but we're not. We're human doings. Because we focus on what do I need to do, what do I need to do, what do I need to do, that we leave out our being. See, it's in our being that God shows up. It's in our being that God will talk to us. And so listen, let's go back to this relationship thing. If I'm growing a relationship, so let's say I'm dating my husband. If I'm never going to date with him, how am I growing to get to know him? And how am I growing our relationship more and more as we are together longer and longer? I've been married for 15 years. Dating, if I count that, been 18. God, has it been that long? If I don't spend the time learning and growing, so things are happening with my husband and his career and things are happening in mine. If we don't spend time sharing with each other, how do we grow together? This is where couples grow apart. But do you want to grow apart from God? So you've got to have time to get to know him and to date God. I said it. Yep. Because the only way you're going to grow you is to spend the time and grow in your relationship. So that's number one. The second thing, which is the hardest thing, is to trust. I think the reason my husband doesn't listen to the GPS is because he doesn't trust it. Well, if you spend time with God, you grow that trust. That's that faith. Hebrews 11:1, I think this is probably the most repeated Bible verse by me, one of my favorites. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So I'm going to encourage you. Here's first bit of homework. Go read the entire chapter of Hebrews 11. It's like the faith chapter. It talks about all these people and all the things they did to have faith. Now, I want to read in my commentary the first piece under Hebrews 11. Now, listen, I put these little bookmarkers here, then I can't never get to them because I'm trying to hurry up. Okay, so Hebrews 11:1 in my commentary. Come on and turn page. Okay, this is what it says. How does the writer of Hebrews define faith? Okay, so I just said it, but I'm going to read to you the way he has it written here. Faith is a reality of what is hoped for, the proof of what is not seen. To exercise faith is to have confidence about an expectation without visible proof that it will happen. Isn't that what a GPS is? Don't we expect a GPS to get us to that final destination without proof that we're going to get there? And see, the thing that's interesting is you won't have proof because you've never been there. So how do you even know the directions are right or not? See, I put all my trust in my GPS. I have no idea where I'm going when I'm using the GPS. So if we could do that with a GPS, those of you that use your GPS the right way, then what would happen if we just totally relied on God? If He put the gift inside you, He knows where you're going. He knows all the plans He has for you, says the Lord, plans for hope and a future. That's a Bible verse. Somebody knows what it is, write it. I think it's in Jeremiah. But He knows that for each of His children. Okay, so let me keep reading. What makes this confidence possible? The trustworthiness of the object. Excuse me, the trustworthiness of the object of faith. The question we must answer is this: is God trustworthy? Is He? Is God trustworthy? And as I say, faith is acting like God is telling the truth. Ooh, that's good. Faith is acting like God is telling the truth. It's knowing it. It's not doubting it. It's standing and remaining in place. That's abiding. And it's growing in your understanding of God. See, as you grow your relationship, you grow in your understanding. As I've got to know my husband, I know the decisions he'll make about things without having to talk to him. I already know the things he'll think. Thank you, Letitia. There was Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and give you hope and a future. Need y'all to get that. Okay. Believers, this is me reading in my study Bible again. Believers of the past trusted Him by faith and won God's approval. Notice that each of the heroes of the faith mentioned in this chapter acted on what they believed, not what they could see, y'all. So go read Hebrews 11:1. It's a great reminder of how you abide. How do you remain in place when you cannot see how it's going to be possible? God does His greatest work when you cannot see how the heck He can do it. So what I want to do really quickly is share, have a guest come in and pour into you more about this whole faith conversation. I'll come back and we'll go more into this. That's step 2. I have a third step around abiding, and then we'll close out our conversation for this part 1. All right. So here's my special guest. Hang tight. Here we go.
Go back to verse 1. Let us therefore fear, lest the promise being left us of entering into His rest, any should seem to come short of it. Come on, verse 2. For unto us was the gospel preached as well as unto them. But the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed with your profit is tied to your faith. No faith, no profit. No faith, no profit. The word did not profit. As strong as God's word is, it did not profit them, not mixed with faith.
So good. I had to play that because the number of people that send me inbox messages telling me, how can I talk about God and profit? Okay, the Bible said it. And then here we go, Bishop T.D. Jakes. Listen, the reason you're not profiting is because your faith is tied to your profit. No faith, no profit. And many of you, the reason why your business has not taken off is you want it to be easy. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have to do it afraid. Y'all hear me say this all the time. So let me read in my commentary. So the Bible verses again that T.D. Jakes just read was Hebrews 4, chapter 4, verse 1 and 2. Okay. So here's what Tony Evans says, verse 2. This is my commentary. It says the Israelites received good news. So this is, you guys remember about the Israelites have been promised the promised land and how they stayed going around this mountain 40 years because they didn't believe. Okay. Now this is a deep part. They're at the edge of their mountain. They're talking about it in Hebrews because it's got to be good. They're talking about it in the New Testament. This has all happened in the Old Testament. Y'all with me? Okay. So I'm going to read this whole because it's good. Can't miss nothing underneath this. Okay. The Israelites received good news, not good news about heaven, but about Canaan. That's the land that was promised. But the message didn't benefit them since they were not united with those who heard it in faith. So they didn't profit, they didn't gain from the news because they weren't in alignment with the faith that the people that were giving it to them had. Y'all with me? Who were those who heard it in faith? Well, when God brought Israel to the edge of the promised land, 12 spies entered on a reconnaissance mission. Afterward, 10 of them said, "We can't take Canaan. The job's too big for us." Only two, Joshua and Caleb, believed God and said, "Yes, we can do it with God's help." Unfortunately, the people of Israel believed the majority report. They believed the spies. As a result, God refused to let any of that generation enter in the land except for Joshua and Caleb. You know why? Because they had faith. Y'all getting my point? Unbelief for the unbeliever is a refusal to act like God is telling the truth. Unbelief for the believer is a refusal to act like God is telling the truth, even when you can't see any evidence around you. God doesn't lie. He doesn't change his mind. He's not going to shift. If he gave you a vision, he meant it. That settles it. Should. But then we have the nerve to come in and say, "Well, I think God maybe God didn't mean it the whole way. Let me shift this around." No, he meant it the whole way, boo. hmm It's easy to side with the majority, but if the majority rejects the will of God, they'll lead you to failure. And then it goes on to talk about this. When we embellish our problems, we make them bigger than they are. When we embellish the Lord, we remind ourselves that He's bigger than we think. He's bigger than any problem. He's bigger than your bank account. He's bigger than your boss. He's bigger than anything that could be in the way of you going after your purpose. But the question is, do you trust Him? For many of you, the reason your business hasn't taken off is as simple as trust. And if you're having a faith issue, that means you need to spend some time to grow your faith. The third thing you've got to do, and I go on and on about this, but I want you to see where you're in deficit, is you got to be intentional. I see so many people that say, "Well, I'm praying about it." Praying is not an intention. When you activate your faith, that's an intention. You with me? So I need you to understand that it's going to take you to activate it. You got to be intentional. You can't just do whatever, whenever, however. You can't just do what you feel like doing. We go back to what I talked about, the abiding to remain in place. So if I'm going to talk about me and my directive around my health, because God snatched my edges about 2 months ago, told me I wasn't being a good steward of my health because I was having a daily glass of wine out in my own self. My trainer said, "Oh, weekend wine is fine, girl, but every day you need to cut back on that." I was like, "Yeah, anyway, I'm not listening to her." Yeah, I will listen to directions. I wonder why my health wasn't shifting. Oh, I'm out in my own self. I can give you examples in every area of my life. So you've got to understand. You've got to spend time to get to know God. That's how trust is built. You can't be on your grandmother's trust, your mother's trust, your best friend's trust. You got to be on your own trust because this is your own relationship. And then you've got to get intentional with your purpose. Okay. So here's how you get intentional with your relationship and with you doing the work that God has called you to do. One, you've got to be deliberate with your time. You know, when I say that, it makes me think of Maxine Waters. You guys remember a couple years ago when she was on the Senate floor and I can't remember who it was, that kept trying to take her time and he wasn't answering her question. She kept interrupting him saying, "Reclaiming my time. You're not answering my question." She was clear. Are you clear? Have you taken the time? If you're not clear, then maybe that's the first step. You need to get clear on what your purpose is. That's setting an intention. But you can't just set it and not then do the work to do it. Be clear on what you're going to do to work toward it. So set the intention and we work toward it. And as you work toward it, focus. Because there'll be all kind of things that will come and distract you from whatever that is. That distraction is just like the spies that came in for the reconnaissance mission and threw all the rest of the children of Israel off from their promise. But Joseph and Caleb were clear. Intentional, didn't shift with the wind. They were focused and they got exactly what God intended for them. See, God has something so great for each of us, for you and for me. Oh, I'm going to get all of mine. How about you? Why? Because I'm going to abide. I'm going to check myself and I'm not, because as long as we're in the flesh, we're not going to be perfect in this whole journey to abide. But the more we spend time with God, the more we grow, the more we get help. Sometimes the reason your business isn't moving forward is because you're trying to give yourself directive from someplace you've never been. That's why having a coach is important. Letitia said, "Whew, you're not kidding. Make a decision to move in purpose. The enemy comes to distract you." Right. Because listen, you guys, I want you to get this. Think about what this world would look like if all of us are operating in our purpose. Think about phenomenal. Everything it would be like we were recreating the Garden of Eden. Now, of course, we can't recreate it because, we won't get into Eve and her hot messiness, because same thing happened to her. The snake came in and shifted and diverted her attention. See, she was abiding before then. And then he said, girl, there's a whole other thing. But she didn't trust God. She trusted what the serpent said. So the way you start to get clear and aligned to God is abiding, is spending that time. It's learning to trust him even when you can't see it, even when it's scary. And entrepreneurship, I'm not going to lie to you, is not easy. But if I want to get to Oprah or Tyler Perry or let's see, Steve Bezos status, oh, I bet you they could tell you all the scary things they had to go through. So the question is this: will you abide? Will you remain in place? That's what Joshua and Caleb did. Hebrews 4, 1 and 2. Go read it. And what you got to decide, here's what I've learned: fear is faith in reverse. Fear is faith in reverse. So you can either choose to stay in fear, and a fear will paralyze you and keep you right where you are. Hello, children of Israel. Our faith means I'm scared, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to trust God. I'm going to work my faith in the middle of this fear. Fear does not go away. So to say I'm going to be fearless, that ain't real, especially when you're playing on a big level. But guess what? I think those fearful moments come because then you have to totally rely on God. So that's our conversation for part one. We're going to dig deeper into this whole conversation because there's a whole nother section of this Bible verse I read that I didn't even touch yet, which is the directive part. Oh, we're going to talk about that. But the first piece you've got to understand, and if you're going to understand the GPS that God has placed in you, so God gave you a gift, and there's direction to follow to get in alignment with that gift. But if you're going to get to that place where you know your direction, you've got to abide first so you could hear, obey, trust. And that obey word, we're going to talk about that tomorrow, right? or I should say in part two. But you've got to get in position to have faith first. Without faith, nothing works. As you just heard TD Jakes say, no faith, no profit. Profit is about the gain that you're meant to be in this world, not just for you. Oh, there'll be profit for you, but you're profiting all the people you touch when you do the thing that you were purposed to do. So with that said, let me remind you, our part two is tomorrow morning. We do part two, FPP breakfast. The thing that I love about Clubhouse in the morning is that I can hear your voice. So I want to encourage you to come in. I'll talk to you about the second layer to this whole conversation around you fighting your GPS, to stop fighting it and learn to abide. As you have one more tool you need. We'll talk about it in the morning. FPP breakfast. .com is where you go find me on Clubhouse. Matter of fact, if you go there now, follow me. You'll be notified when we go live in the morning. All right. So with that said, I want to always thank you and honor you for being here. I'm here every Monday night. We do part one, and then Tuesday morning we do part two. And the reason I break them up is I want you to sit with what I've shared with you tonight. Where are you off in your ability to abide? See, that abiding is where you get in alignment with God's assignment for your life. All right. So with that said, I'll see y'all in the morning. Have a phenomenal rest of your Monday night. Let's continue to 8 tomorrow a.m. I can't wait. By the way, share with me the one thing that you found the most value out of what I share with you tonight. All right. So with that, I'll see y'all in the morning. Have a good rest of your night. Bye, y'all.